struggle with these things, so
It's very,
I'd
it's,
be.
no, it's a tight one.
It's a tight one, yeah. Yeah, dude.
So that's good.
How's that?
Oh, you got it.
Is that bother you, Spur?
No, it's fine.
is Lucinda Koza, and I organized / curated / everything this TEDx Women Talk event. And I just want to thank you guys so much for being here. My life's work is to amplify the voices of women. And if I feel very strongly that if we don't do that, women's voices might be erased. I'm also excited to have 2 high school students as part of our program tonight, because we are counting on you guys. So, all right, enjoy the evening. Thank you so much.
Something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
When my son was 10 years old, he asked me a question I'll never forget. He said, "Mommy, where do you go when you go away behind your eyes?" And he started to cry. In that moment, my heart sank. I knew that my worst fear was coming true. My damage was damaging my kids. I wanted to lie to him. I wanted to say, "I don't go anywhere, I'm right here." But the truth is, I've been disappearing behind my eyes for a very long time. Ever since I tried to perform CPR on my father as he was dying, and he died in my arms. Ever since then, I've had PTSD. I get panic attacks. I have these intrusive thoughts that just won't stop. I startle at the least sound, especially in the middle of the night. My body is just ready to run at any moment. But I always had this frustration. Why am I not better yet? When will I recover? If this happened so long ago, why am I not better yet? Maybe some of you have that question too. If your trauma happened in the past, why are you not better? But I had this one superpower that wasn't under my conscious control. Whenever I would get really stressed out, really panicky, my brain would suddenly go somewhere else. Whether I would focus on my research, the data I was coding, the book I was reading, the patient I was treating in front of me, suddenly I would be completely calm. The panic would go away, my heart rate would slow down. And in some ways it was really helpful, certainly let me be productive. But a little bit, it felt like malware that was taking over my brain. I had no conscious control over it. I didn't know how to make it stop. It was running me. Psychologists call this dissociation. And I just wondered, when will my dissociation go away? When my oldest daughter was born, the nurse wheeled the baby's bassinet into my room. And she said to me, we were chatting, and she said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Actually, I was just accepted to the graduate school of my dreams. I'm studying to be a child psychologist." And she said, "Wow, this baby is so lucky. She's gonna have the perfect person to be her mom." I must have said something polite because she didn't call the psych ward, and she left, and I was holding my baby, and I burst out crying, and my tears were just falling on the baby's face because I did not feel like the perfect person to parent anyone. I felt so damaged, and I knew it was inevitable that my damage would damage my children. How could it not? And I just had this frustration, like, when will I get better already? Am I such a drama queen? Why am I still traumatized? It was so long ago. Maybe some of you have also asked this question. If trauma happened in the past, why are we not better yet? And the truth is, I kind of wish someone had told me this. We are set up to make this mistake. We all make this mistake because the fundamental nature of trauma is something that we misunderstand. And it comes from the very name. The word trauma comes from the Greek trauma, which means wound. And we all know how wounds work, right? You get a wound, you cut yourself, it hurts, you bleed, it crusts over, it turns all sorts of interesting colors, and eventually it goes away and it's like it never happened. Or maybe you get a scar and you kind of look at it and you go, yeah, that happened once, but it doesn't hurt, right? It's over. Trauma, though, doesn't operate that way in our brains, and it's worse. And I blame my profession, psychology, for the next problem. If you think you're traumatized and you go to a psychologist's office or a general practitioner's office, what they're going to do is they're going to hand you a checklist, and they're going to say, did you experience any of these events? And it's events like from what we call the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual, that basically is the cookbook of what could possibly be wrong with us. And it says, like, were you ever in threat of dying? Did you ever witness someone die in front of you? Did you ever experience serious violence or assault? And if so, okay, you're traumatized. And then they give you a checklist of symptoms. Do you have intrusive thoughts? Do you have panic attacks? Do you have hypervigilance, which means you startle at the least sound? Do you have disturbances in sleep or mood? And do these persist for over a month? If so, congratulations, you're traumatized. But here's the problem with this definition. Trauma is not a wound, and trauma is not a checklist. Trauma is any experience that you undergo that's too big for your brain to metabolize, that completely shakes your sense of safety in the world, or that shakes your sense as someone who's a competent operator of this world. Like, this is a world that I understand, and I know how to operate within it. If something like that happened to you, congratulations, you're traumatized. And that's okay. Now, here's the thing. We're going to make it a little bit more specific. Suppose you have a child and she's living in a home where her parents are functional alcoholics. Sometimes you come home and they're regular. Sometimes you come home and you better keep everything quiet because dad's just looking to beat whoever crosses his path because he has a hangover. But you don't know which parent you're going to come home to. That's not on that symptom checklist. But that's going to really shake your sense of self and someone who knows how to operate the world. Now, your brain cannot operate in a world that feels unsafe. Your brain needs what I call the illusion of safety to be able to keep working. So your brain says, I'm going to restore my sense of safety. What am I going to do? I'm going to create if-then rules. And when I create these if-then rules, you'll just follow those rules and you'll feel safe. I call this the trauma app in your brain. So what your brain says is, perhaps you're that little girl whose dad is unpredictable. Sometimes he's enraged, sometimes he's calm. Maybe you say, I will keep everybody around me calm and quiet. I will always soothe the troubled waters. I will never let anyone be stressed in my presence. Then I can feel safe. You become a people pleaser, you fawn. Maybe you're in a home where there's a lot of aggression, and you say, I will lash out. Nobody is going to make me feel small. I will explode no matter what. I will never be small again. Maybe you do what I do. You're always perfect. You never make a mistake because my mistakes kill people, right? So I'm never going to make a mistake again. You're going to go away inside your brain and disappear so you don't have to feel that level of stress ever again. Trauma is not a scar. It's software. It's not a checklist. It's so much bigger than a checklist. It's something that's too big for your brain to metabolize. Now I'm going to prove this to you by talking about how trauma works in our brain. So right now, everyone in this room, I want you to think of your favorite teacher, the one person who made you look forward to going to school, the one person who lit up your life. I'm noticing a lot of you moving your eyes. How many of you have a face or a name? I see a lot of hands raised. Some of you don't. Maybe not everyone had the greatest teachers. So think of the name of your childhood pet, or the street you lived on as a kid, or the best meal you ever ate. You just activated your hippocampus. That is the part of your brain that's responsible for what we call narrative memory, when you tell stories about yourself. Now, we know this because we have great technology called functional magnetic resonance imaging, a fMRI machine. We can put you into that machine and we can see which parts of your brain activate when we ask you to do different things. So when you tell that story about your favorite teacher, your hippocampus activates. Let's understand other parts of your brain that have to do with trauma. The emergency response center of your brain is called the amygdala. The amygdala is responsible for your stress response. If right now here in this room, the fire alarm would go off, everyone's amygdala would activate, it would go danger, and you would have a ton of adrenaline going through your bloodstream. The adrenaline would give you a ton of energy. Your big thigh muscles would have energy. Your heart would be pounding. Your stomach would be clenching because you don't need to digest food right now. You need to run. Your fingers and toes would feel cold because you don't need blood in your fingers and toes. You're not writing neatly now. You're running out the door. That's what our amygdala does. We then have a part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. This is the part of your brain that's responsible for language, for logical thinking, and for acting in accordance with your values. When your amygdala is sounding, your prefrontal cortex can't do very much because how many of us can concentrate when a fire alarm is blaring? We also have our bodies. Our bodies are like the battery that powers this whole system. Our bodies are one giant keep me alive machine. So now, everyone with me so far? Now let's get super technical. There's a part of your brain called the DMN, the default mode network. It's what your brain is doing when your brain isn't doing anything much at all. Hopefully no one in this room has their DMN activated right now. Your DMN is what's active when you're daydreaming. If we put you in an fMRI machine, we ask you to daydream, your DMN will turn on. Now, there's a part of your DMN called the PCC, the posterior cingulate cortex. The PCC is responsible for what we call self-referential thinking. Basically, that's a fancy way of saying, what's happening right now and what does it mean for me? Because if you think of the DMN as a screensaver, it has to always be ready to reactivate the system at any moment. So that's the job of the PCC. It reactivates when something's happening. Imagine you're daydreaming in class, not that anyone in here has ever done such a thing. And suddenly you hear your name, right? That's your PCC like activating, wait, she called on me, let me pretend I was listening. So now if we put you in an fMRI and you have a traumatic memory, and we say to you, think about your favorite teacher, your hippocampus lights up. If we say to you, think about your traumatic memory, your PCC, your posterior cingulate cortex, lights up. The part of your brain that mediates what's happening to me right now. If you think about that, the researchers actually, unusually for researchers, put this very poetically. They said, traumatic memories are fragments of the past intruding on the present. They're not a scar, they're software, and they're software that's operating right now, which means that trauma app activates whenever your trauma memory is activated. Anyone triggers you, reminds you of it, your trauma app activates. We're coming to another word, an interesting word that people very often misunderstand. The word is trigger. How many of you have heard the word trigger in your lives? How many are a little sick of hearing the word trigger in your lives? That word is a little overused. So let's redefine the word trigger. A trigger is anything that turns on your trauma app. So imagine that little girl who always kept everybody calm because otherwise dad was gonna beat somebody. So that little girl is in a situation where she really wants to go home on time for work. Her boss is asking her to stay late. And her people pleasing is saying, I can't say no. I need to keep everybody happy. I need to keep everybody calm. She means to say no. My kids are waiting for me. I promised them I'd be home early. I need to be the kind of mom I value being. I want to go home. Every fiber of her being wants to say no, and yes comes out. The trauma app activated before her conscious thought. That's what I mean by a trigger. That's what I mean by a trauma app. Here's the good news, and I will say this about a lot of things. For example, this has never happened in my house or anything like that, but suppose your 4-year-old is running down the hall. He has taken off his shoes for the 4th time. You are going to be late for work. You mean to stay calm and stay with him and get him to get those shoes on, and yet the trauma app says, I cannot be late, I'm perfect, I need to stay in control of this situation. Before you know it, your voice rises, you're yelling, the kid's crying, the shoes are on, and you feel terrible about yourself. That was not you, that was your trauma. So many post-traumatic parents say to me, what kind of a parent am I? What's wrong with me? How can I let my kids trigger me? Don't I love them? Like, why would my kid trigger me if I love them? And I have really good news. Your kids don't trigger you. Your kids reveal your triggers, right? Because now you know we can figure out the if-then rule. Whatever you did that was not consistent with your values, that thing that you did not want to do and you did anyway, the yelling, the dissociating, the perfectionism, the criticizing, the saying yes when you meant to say no, any of those things, all of that is not you. It's your trauma app activating before you get to parent. So understand that, because your kids don't trigger you. They reveal your triggers. And that's good news, because we have to reveal it to heal it. Now that we know our triggers, we can do something about them. Our kids are the map, the mirror, and the motivator out of our trauma, because our kids are the ones who hold up a map to us of where we need to go. Like when my son said to me, where do you go when you go away behind your eyes? He was giving me a map. I needed to go to the place where I could be a present mom. In another example, suppose you are a mom who's a people pleaser. You have a teenage daughter. She asks you for something. It's totally inappropriate. It's way too scary a movie. It's a party that you are not comfortable with. It's a randomly shaped bit of plastic that costs more than your mortgage. You'd really like to say no. She makes you feel really bad when you say no, the way only teenage girls can do. Anyone who's parented a teenage girl knows what I mean. And every fiber of your being wants to say no. You're the adult. You know that this party isn't good for her. You know that movie's too scary. You know that you don't value buying that ridiculous piece of plastic. You just don't. And you find yourself saying yes. You really wanted to do it. She's the map. I need to be a mom who can have boundaries. I need to be comfortable with her discomfort. Sometimes moms need to say no. And yet, here I am saying yes. So she's the map. Your kids are also the mirror. They hold up to you an image of yourself, and they really reflect you back to yourself in a way that actually matters. I've been going away behind my eyes for a very long time, and in every other instance of my life, it worked for me. At work, let me tell you, my boss loved it because I could get a lot of work done. I would be sitting on the train, like going back from NYU to New Jersey, and I would be coding data to the point where the driver had to tell me, ma'am, we're at the last stop now, you need to get off the train. My boss loved it. My friends made space for it. They just knew that sometimes I space out. And they would just be, I would say something like, what just happened? They'll be like, oh yeah, and they would catch me up in the last 5 minutes of what happened. They were fine with it. My husband could say to me, when are you available? We have to talk about this. And that was fine. Everyone made space for it. The only person who wouldn't make space for it was my kid. When my kid said to me, when I was in high school, a friend said to me, I hate that you space out all the time, it's so weird. And I was like, okay, this is me, I space out, take me or leave me. I didn't care all that much, like thank you for the feedback, sorry you don't like it, this is what my brain does. Okay, when my kid said it to me though, I had to look in the mirror and say, I need to change this if it's damaging him. And they're the motivation, right? Because your kids are the best reason why. Of course we can get through our trauma without kids. Of course there are other reasons why. But our kids are the best reason why very often. Now, so many people ask me, they say, like, you're an expert on PTSD. You treat trauma for a living. Are you better yet? Have you healed? Is your PTSD better yet? And it's such an interesting question. And I kind of had bad news for all of you. Of course I'm not better yet, because trauma is not a wound. So I can't heal from something that's not a wound. At the same token, though, I can take that software that's in my brain and I can reprogram it. I can repurpose it. I can use it for my own desires, for what I actually want to be doing. So how do I do that? How do I reprogram my trauma app? The first thing I do is when I notice my trauma app activating, I thank the app. I say, thank you, trauma app. You're here. You want to help me. You want to protect me. You were what kept me alive during all those years when I was having panic attacks and I couldn't survive. You really were helpful. I appreciate it. Thanks for your suggestion that I yell right now or that I dissociate and go away behind my eyes right now. Appreciate it. It's an option. It's not the option I'm going to be using. And what happens with an app when you deselect its permission? So you deselect the permission, and what does the app do? It says, warning, deselecting this permission may destabilize the entire system. Are you sure you want to proceed? And how does it do that? It makes you feel a lot of stress. So you're the mom who doesn't know how to say no, and you say no, and you feel a ton of stress. I want to run away behind my eyes, and I'm going to force myself to stay present and name 2 things that are green and 3 things that are blue and 1 thing that's red and stay in the moment and breathe. I really am going to do that right now. The trauma app is going to make me feel intensely uncomfortable, and I'm going to do it anyway. I may sing my instructions instead of yelling them. I may decide to dance with my kids to manage my stress. I'm going to do something else. Whatever my trauma app is asking me to do, I'm just going to mindfully do something else instead. And I say just, but that's the wrong word because I think just is a 4-letter word. Rather simply, right? I'm simply going to do something else. And as I keep practicing doing something else, it starts to become second nature. I start to reprogram that app one parenting interaction at a time. I start reclaiming the software in my brain for my own purposes, one interaction at a time. Not always, not perfectly, but I get to reclaim it every time I practice that. And children will give you many, many opportunities to feel stress and practice that. You're that mom who doesn't know how to say no, and you will have many opportunities to say to your kid, I get that no is hard to hear. I'm sticking with my no anyway. And the more you do that, the better it will be. And that will generalize to other areas of your life. You'll start being able to say no to your boss. You'll start being able to say no to your family. You'll start being able to say no to that frenemy that sometimes makes requests that you don't like. You start with your kids, but then you can generalize to everybody else in your life. So when are you all in this room going to get better from your trauma? Right here, right now, today, you get to start. You get to start deselecting permissions mindfully in your app. Every time you notice yourself feeling stressed and your whole body wants to react one way, and you make the decision to act in another way, you're reclaiming resources from the trauma app because trauma is not a scar. It's not past memory. You're not lazy or a drama queen if you're still holding on to your trauma. That's not what you're doing. You're not holding on to it on purpose. You have an operating system in your brain that's activating whenever you feel a certain stress. It's not you. It's your trauma doing that. But you get to decide, this is my very own software, I get to reclaim it. Some of you may have thought that this was going to be a talk about parenting. You thought like, oh, she's a child psychologist, she's going to teach us how to like get the 4-year-old to put on their shoes or get the teenager to accept a no or the million of other things that parents need to learn how to do. I didn't teach you parenting in this talk. What I taught you instead was how to be a parent, because as soon as we reclaim our admin permissions from the trauma app, we reclaim our psychological resources for our own purposes, that's when we truly start to heal. That's when we start to embrace our superpower. And if we're doing it for the sake of our children, our real world children, or maybe our inner children, we'll never have a better reason. Thank you.
I'm Kendra Koch, and I'm here today to tell you about my life as a bug. And not just any bug, a cockroach. You see, when I was a child, adults treated me like a pest. I was always the wrong kind of kid, too loud, too sensitive, too much, too everything. When I cried because my clothes felt like they were suffocating me, my parents told me to be quiet and be a good girl. When I struggled to do my homework or remember my lunch in my backpack, my teachers told me to pay more attention, try harder. And classmates called me weird, stuffed me in trash cans, and laughed every time I raised my hand to answer questions at school in class. When I started complaining about migraines at age 8, instead of getting medical care, I was told to stop being dramatic. It didn't take me long to believe that, like a cockroach, I was unloved and unwanted. I started flattening myself to fit in spaces where I didn't think I belonged. I tried exterminating the parts of me that people didn't like or understand. But by college, hiding was no longer an effective strategy. My migraines were getting worse. I couldn't focus in class, and I really, really wanted to have friends. So I decided, just like a caterpillar into a butterfly, I needed to transform. I crawled into the multi-billion-dollar chrysalis known as the health and wellness industry. I crawled in so deep, I even became a wellness expert, developing products in Silicon Valley to help other people transform into butterflies too. From mainstream medicine to fringe advice that I found in internet forums, I tried everything that claimed it would fix me. Supplements, Pilates, bubble baths, mud baths, sound baths, all the baths. And then when that didn't work, I tried MRIs and CAT scans and blood tests. These never turned up anything, so I kept trying. I tried dozens of medications, self-help books, and courses on productivity. Then I tried journals and more self-help books, and even more self-help books. Amazon really likes me. I even broke my own heart by quitting gluten. Thousands of dollars in medical debt later and hundreds of hours lost. I was tragically still me. Even worse, I was also depressed, anxious, broke, and deeply, deeply confused. But for some unexplainable reason, I still believed that I could one day be a butterfly. That is, until a therapist shocked me out of my cozy yoga pants constructed chrysalis when she told me that I had ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, autism, and complex PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I was 34 and pregnant, and I was definitely not ready for that news. I had a degree in psychology. I worked in the wellness industry for over a decade. How on earth did I not know that about myself? None of it made sense. But that was the information I needed to start healing. Not transforming, healing. I started to admit that the chrysalis I was in, it was pretty lonely, and I was stuck on a stick. Maybe trying to change myself was the wrong solution. Maybe it wasn't so bad to be a cockroach after all. Sure, butterflies are beautiful, but cockroaches? We're clever, adaptive, survival machines. While butterflies need a spring garden to survive, cockroaches can do it in the trash, in winter, without their heads. That is true. They have evolved sensory systems that, like me, alert them to danger, help them find their way in the world, and it makes them perceptive, adaptive innovators. And unlike the butterfly, cockroaches don't try to take on the world alone. Instead of competing with one another, they live together in colonies, sharing food and information that helps them all thrive. So if there's anything you take away from this talk today, it's this. Healing is not an act of transforming into someone else, and it's not an act of exterminating the parts of yourself that people don't like or understand. Healing is the act of discovering who you already are, finding what you actually need, and shedding the negative beliefs about yourself that are keeping you isolated and stuck. Unlike the butterfly, cockroaches don't transform or metamorphose by rearranging themselves into something new. They shed their skin and regrow until they're bigger and bigger and bigger. And for me, that is what healing was. I was shedding the parts of me that I previously rejected, the things people told me about myself that held me back. And every time I did that, I grew more capacity to hold my pain, my struggle, my gifts, and everything about who I was. Healing also doesn't require you to change. It requires you to connect. First with yourself, and then with your colony, the people who see you, understand you, and love you for who you really are. So I wonder, how many of you have been living in a chrysalis, scared, alone, and wondering when life will change? Here's what I want you to know. You don't have to keep hiding in there. The world doesn't need more butterflies. It needs more cockroaches. More people brave enough to survive in hard places, perceptive enough to sense what others miss, and generous enough to share what they've learned. And even though I may not be a butterfly, I'm still going to grow wings and thrive, not despite who I am, but because of it. And instead of feeding off the butterfly gardens, I'll take a page out of the cockroach playbook and metabolize the world's trash, outdated systems, harmful beliefs, and shame into the very compost that will grow them. Thank you.
What is it? I asked. I'd just given birth. and it seemed like everyone in the delivery room had forgotten that I didn't know what I was having. I'd gone through a very long IVF process that resulted in 4 embryos, 2 boys, 2 girls. My doctor asked me if I wanted to choose the gender, and I said, no, just go with the strongest one. God's will be done. It's a girl, someone shouted. A girl? And it was at that moment I wish I had a mirror, not to watch the baby as it came out, but to see the look on my face at the shock. I have a daughter? See, I had always wanted a boy first. I felt like I would be the perfect boy mom. I work in sports. I'm obsessed with baseball. I'm wearing heels now, but I love myself a pair of Jordans. And now, here I am with a daughter, and I was scared. I wasn't just terrified of raising a daughter. I was terrified she'd inherit the same wounds that I never asked for. My childhood was not good. My parents were drug addicts, and I was eventually placed in foster care. And it was a very lonely way to grow up. Having never truly felt love, I questioned if I would ever have the ability to love. But despite that, I knew in my heart that the thing I wanted the most was to be a mom, to do it the right way, to build the dream life, the picture-perfect family. When I was diagnosed with infertility at 37, it became another blow to a life that had been filled with disappointment, abandonment, and pain. To the outside, I had it all together. I was thriving in my career, had great friends. But inside, I was spiraling. And once I made the decision to get a sperm donor and become a single mom by choice, I knew I'd have to face my past in order to build a brighter future for my child. And in taking ownership of my fertility, I had to take ownership of my healing. I'd spent years being strong because I had to be. But motherhood, real motherhood, required me to be soft, vulnerable, open. And I'm a Scorpio, so that's not easy. So I made the decision to go to therapy. And I started telling the truth, even the ugly parts. And I apologized to myself for surviving the only way I truly knew how. And it wasn't easy, but slowly I began to heal. But not because everything got easier, but because I stopped pretending it didn't hurt. And the most innovative thing I ever did wasn't IVF. It was choosing to break a cycle instead of repeating it. There was a lot of trauma, and I found patterns that bled into my romantic relationships. I didn't know how to let people in. I didn't know how to choose the ones who stayed. And the idea of raising a daughter, of teaching her how to love herself, how to trust herself, felt like the biggest responsibility of my life. Because here's the thing, when you have a child, you think you're just creating a new life, but really, you're confronting your own. And IVF forced me to confront everything I had been running from. But the real work wasn't happening in the clinic. The real work was learning how to believe that I was worthy of being someone's mother. I realized I can't change where I come from, the things I'd been through, but I can decide where the story goes from here. Every injection, every tear, every dollar spent, it wasn't just bringing me closer to a baby, it was bringing me closer to the woman I was meant to be. So when the nurse placed my daughter, Isla, on my chest, when I heard her cry, I didn't just become a mother that day, I became my own. Becoming a mother wasn't the finish line, because healing doesn't magically appear the moment you hold a baby. Healing happens in the everyday choices we make. When I look into her big, beautiful gray eyes and tell her she's loved and mean it. When I mess up and I give myself grace instead of punishment. She thinks I'm teaching her how to be confident, how to be curious, how to take up space. Really, she's teaching me. She is proof that you can grow something beautiful out of a past that tried to break you. And I know that there are people here who are listening, who have some sort of version of my story, and maybe you've been told that something you desperately want is out of reach, and maybe you've been the strong one for so long that softness feels like a threat. Maybe you're still healing from wounds no one can see. Sometimes people call me brave, but I didn't become a mom because I was fearless. I became a mom because I was tired of fear deciding everything for me. So I chose a path that didn't just create a child, it ended up creating a new version of me. One who could say, the story didn't go the way I imagined, but it's still a story worth celebrating. And now, when I look at Isla, I look at her joy, her confidence, her curiosity, I realize I didn't just give her life, she gave me mine back. She's proof that a different ending is possible. She's proof that healing is generational. She's proof that I was always worthy of love, even before she arrived. Do I wish my story had been easier? Sure. Yes. But when I look at Isla, I realize if even one thing during the course of my life had been different, she might not be here. Every detour, every heartbreak, every moment when I thought I'd reached just the complete end of my strength, that was leading me to her. Because love that is chosen, that is fought for, that is built from the rubble is unshakable. So, if you are right now sitting in your own story of waiting or loss, fear, uncertainty, if your path looks nothing like you planned, please hear me. You are not behind. You are becoming. You are becoming the person who will one day look back and say, the moment I thought everything was falling apart was actually the moment I was being rebuilt. I went from living a life of why me to what now? And that's the question that changed my life. It led me to a delivery room and hearing the words, it's a girl who will grow up knowing that she was wanted, not by accident, but on purpose. A girl who will never have to doubt whether she is loved. A a girl who turned a story of survival into a legacy of healing. She is my innovation. Isla is my identity, my healing. And every day, I get to choose her. I choose me, too. Thank you.
Her hair was wild, her face red and hot with sweat, her fists clenched tightly, her feet stomped loudly, her eyes full of fury. She looked at me, pointed her finger, and said, "You're a bad, bad mom." She was 3 years old and absolutely certain of her anger. Defiant, convicted, clear. Her voice didn't shake, her body didn't shrink. She didn't even try to soften the blow. And here's the thing. I was secretly delighted. Yes, the word stung. No mother wants to hear this. But her fire, her aliveness, she was connected to it. She didn't fear her anger. She owned it. And I stood there wondering to myself, when did we stop allowing ourselves to be that clear? When did we start making anger a problem? Because somewhere along the way, women learn to dim that fire, to cry instead of rage, to stay calm when everything inside of us says, this isn't okay. We're taught to manage our anger, to soften it, to smile through it, to make it pretty, or bury it all together. But here's the truth. Anger, when held wisely, isn't destruction. It's direction. Let's talk science for a moment. A series of studies done by the American Psychological Association found that anger increases motivation and focus. In one study, participants were asked to do difficult puzzles. Those that felt anger outperformed those who felt neutral, even those who felt happy. Why? Because anger says, this matters, keep going. Now imagine that same energy in a negotiation, in a movement, in a boardroom. Anger is fuel, but only some people are allowed to use it. We are far more comfortable with certain kinds of anger. A coach yelling on the sidelines, passionate. A mother protecting her child, fierce. A man pounding the table in a boardroom, strong leadership. But a woman standing up for herself, she's too emotional, unstable, difficult. A study done by Yale found that when men express anger at work, they gain in status. But when women do, they're seen as less competent and less worthy of leadership. Same emotion, different outcome. That's not just bias, that's programming. And it teaches women to disconnect from our own protection, to question ourselves when we could be holding others accountable, to feel guilt when there could be clarity. So what do we do instead? We ignore it. We bury it. We vent privately and implode silently. I did it too. One of my earliest memories, I was 6 years old. My brother, red-faced and furious, stomping up and down the stairs, yelling, "They cheated." He keeps slamming a door again and again. My parents judging him silently. I'm hiding and thinking to myself, I never want to be that out of control. I made a vow. I'd be the good one. I'd be the calm one. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't take up space with my anger. That decision followed me into school, into work, into leadership, even into my relationships. I was a pro at holding it all together, a master poker face, managing my emotions, being reasonable, even when I was burning inside. And here's what I now know. It's not just emotional. It's physical. Studies show that women who suppress anger are more likely to suffer from anxiety, autoimmune diseases, and even die earlier. What we call selflessness, research calls self-silencing. In one study, women found that if they don't speak up in conflict, they're 4 times more likely to die prematurely, even when controlling for smoking and blood pressure. We're not just staying quiet, we're eroding. And burnout, it's not just about work. It's about all the time and energy spent being likable instead of being honest. That was me too. On paper, I had it all. A prestigious role, international assignments, a big life. But behind the scenes, I was managing resentment with wine, booking luxury vacations just to feel something, performing power, but feeling disconnected. And oddly enough, I found my way back through dodgeball. Yes, dodgeball. Me and other grown professionals in sweatbands hurtling rubber balls at each other for fun. We were not there for fitness. The tater tots and beers afterwards made sure of that. We were there to throw hard, to grunt, to shout, to hit, to miss. We were there to play all out. No emotional labor, no pretending. And what I realized was, this wasn't rage, it was release. This wasn't chaos, this was clarity. This was anger alive in my body, and it made me feel powerful. That same fire followed me into the boardroom when I needed it most. My boss at the time, loud, reactive, abrasive. Every month then, we'd have high-stake financial meetings. He'd ask me, how's performance? I'd say, we missed target. Before I could finish, he'd cut me off. Furious, finger-pointing, explosive. Every time I'd shrink, even though I was fuming inside. But I didn't yell. I didn't storm out. I decided to study my anger. I stopped treating it as a liability and started using it as data. And the closer I got to it, the more I realized underneath the fire was fear. Fear of looking incompetent, fear of losing control. And the more I understood my fear, the more I realized underneath his anger, he was afraid. Afraid of failing, afraid of looking weak in front of his bosses, afraid of the pressure to deliver goals that felt impossible. And the more I understood his fear, the less I feared mine. And just like in dodgeball, I stopped dodging and I started throwing back. Not recklessly, but with precision. I spoke clearly. I interrupted when it mattered, not to dominate, but to lead. I stopped trying to be likable, and I started being effective. To land the point, to shift the room. And it worked. He promoted me twice. Not because I appeased him. And it was not because I appeased him, but because I stopped abandoning myself. And anger, it didn't make me less credible. It made me unshakable. And this isn't just my story. It's backed by science. Researcher John Gottman studied couples over decades, and he found that women who express anger in their relationships, their male partners were unhappy at first. But over time, their relationships grew stronger because men learned to accept their influence. And the women that stayed quiet, their marriages looked peaceful until they collapsed. Why? Because emotions like anger are GPS signals. They tell us what we care about, what we value, what needs to change. Ignore them and lose your way completely. So what do we do with this fire? We train with it. Feel, fuel, fire. Feel. Notice the heat in your body, the tightening, the rush. Don't flinch, don't apologize. Say it, I'm angry, and that matters. Fuel, let it power your presence. Drop your shoulders, stand taller, breathe deeper. Let it sharpen your voice, not to hurt, but to hit. Fire, take that shot, interrupt, speak that line, redirect that conversation. You don't have to explode, you just have to be clear. And anger, it's never been the problem. It's the silence that follows it or the explosion that happens when it's been held for far too long. Unfelt anger corrodes. Unintegrated, it burns everything around us. But if we know it, if we have a relationship with it, anger becomes what it was always meant to be. Direction, clarity, power. Frederick Douglass said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. I say, if there is no anger, there is no clarity. Not just for us, but the cultures, communities, and systems we shape. So train with it. Feel, fuel, fire. And when it rises, don't rush, don't run, don't apologize, don't explode. Use it. Let it land, let it lead, and watch what changes. Thank you.
Okay. If you've ever watched is it on? Oh yeah. If you've ever watched an episode of a medical TV show or even seen a clip of one, you've probably seen a medical grade oxygen tank, the ones the patients are hooked up to, the ones connected to the nose tubes or the masks under the flashing lights in the back of an ambulance. But what most people don't realize is just how powerful these tanks actually are. Each one contains around a whopping 2,000 pounds per square inch. This is enough force to become a flying projectile with the power to blast through cinder block walls if handled incorrectly or damaged. When I first began as a training EMT, this terrified me. I remember growing more and more worried, deathly nervous, thinking, if I mess this up, it could actually hurt someone. It wasn't until a kind, open EMT at my local fire department took the time to help me, showing me how to reassemble the tank, letting me reassemble and assemble the tank over and over again, that I began to feel confident. Because at just 16 years old, I was stepping into a world that demanded precision, the world of healthcare, where every action holds tremendous weight and even sometimes a life in your hands. In the world of healthcare, we are often told that young people are our future. But in healthcare, the future doesn't wait. It is vital to understand how much energy and innovation youth are already capable of if given the chance to contribute. When we stop treating age as an obstacle, we create space for more adaptability, empathy, and curiosity, which are also the foundations of healing. We can also prevent burnout by allowing young people to experience healthcare when their curiosity first starts. Thus, it is essential to open the doors of medicine to youth, such as myself, uplifting us every step of the way. Doing so not only fosters confidence, but it also fuels collaboration and compassion across generations of providers. Because at the end of the day, our purpose as humans to care and to heal matters far more than just age. Across high-intensity medical training simulations, like EMT environments, younger people who demonstrate clear communication and empathy can earn leadership roles regardless of their age. This highlights that leadership and emotional intelligence can be more of a determining factor than seniority. For instance, in my own EMT cohort, I observed that compassion and composure determine team trust and efficiency. As well as this, I realized that age did not have to be a determining factor in choosing leaders. Indeed, I found myself in that exact position designating tasks during our first emergency scenario. Here, I could see that compassion was an active choice rather than only a consequence of time. Additionally, within clinical and research settings, adaptability is often valued more over years of experience. For example, after speaking with a lead administrator at a major cancer clinic, I learned that the recruitment often revolved around finding new nurses who could adapt faster to new technologies, compared to those with more years of experience in differing specialties. Again, supporting this idea that youth's greatest advantage is our flexibility, our resilient willingness to learn new things. Furthermore, throughout structured mentorship opportunities, such as Novartis Girls in Science and Business, exposure to young yet accomplished female leads provided further evidence that leadership and innovation can relate to influence not solely based off tenure. Conversations with female leaders, including Novartis's president of biomedical research, highlighted that engagement and curiosity from youth can meaningfully contribute to complex scientific discussions. Of course, experience matters in medicine, but what I've learned throughout various diverse environments that I've grown in is that adaptability and empathy can be just as powerful. Instead of replacing experience, youth redefines what it can be. In each healthcare environment, from emergency medicine to oncology to pharmaceutical mentorship, I've consistently observed a measurable pattern. The drive of youth, showing leadership and innovation, can predict influence just as strongly as seniority or years of experience can. When we expand who we allow to contribute, we expand what's possible. When you see a young, curious mind, don't try to shield them from the world of healthcare. Invite them into it. Imagine a healthcare system led by collaboration, where innovation can sprout from shared curiosity and differing identities, where youth can feel more prepared and empowered from an early age to contribute. Experience may teach precision, but we need youth to teach possibility. I would not be where I am today without the support of strong female leaders, including my role model EMTs, oncologists and administrators, Novartis mentors, and especially my amazing single mother. Don't leave youth in the dark. Show us how bright the light can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Imagine you walk into your kitchen, you turn a knob, there's an instant flame. You're able to breathe normally as you cook. Now imagine you walk into your kitchen, there's no knob. Your stovetop is your kitchen floor, a dirt floor. You have to strike a match to light a flame. Thick smoke hits your face. It clogs your throat until you can't breathe. It makes your eyes water, and you haven't even started cooking yet. This is the reality for 1.2 billion women today. This issue I'm about to speak on kills more people than every single cancer death in the United States, multiplied by 5. More than stroke, heart disease, and diabetes combined, yet you've never heard of it. This is about justice, about gender, and about cooking. Take a look at this energy ladder. See how it divides our world? At the bottom, the poorest communities cook with wood, crop waste, and dung. As you move up the ladder towards wealthier nations, people cook with cleaner energy like electricity and gas. Think about that. The most universal act of love, a mother cooking dinner for her child, becomes a death sentence based on where you're born. Same love, same meal, different air. Take a look at this map. See those deep red marks across South Asia and Africa? Those aren't just statistics. Behind every deep mark is a mother, a daughter, a grandmother, gasping for breath as they cook. The World Health Organization estimates that about 3.2 million people die every year from indoor air pollution. To put that into perspective, that's like a major airplane crash at every hour, killing everyone on board. Except these crashes are silent, invisible, and almost entirely preventable. Take a look at these statistics from countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Ethiopia. Women cook about 10 meals per week. Men, between 1 and 2. The image on the left says it all. The hidden danger of cooking with firewood, equivalent to smoking 400 cigarettes a day. Look at that woman in the picture. She's not choosing to smoke 400 cigarettes a day, but that's what her society, her gender, and her poverty condemn her to do, just to feed her children. Let me break this down in human terms. 1.2 billion women lack access to clean cooking. They are the main cooks in their family using biomass fuels like wood, dung, and charcoal. 3.2 million people die from indoor air pollution. And here's the kicker. Women face 33% higher exposure than men. Why? Because society deems cooking to be women's role. Over 700,000 children die from indoor air pollution every year. And women face this double burden, being poisoned themselves and having to watch their children gasping for breath. The smoke doesn't just make you cough. It destroys you from the inside out. Chronic pulmonary obstructive disease, asthma, bronchitis, lung cancer, and other respiratory disease risk doubled, even if you've never touched a cigarette before. It doesn't end there. eye damage, cataracts until you can barely see, heart disease, and for pregnant women, adverse pregnancy outcomes like low birth weight babies. Imagine carrying your child for 9 months and watching it enter the world disadvantaged because you were forced to inhale poison as you were cooking. Girls spend 15 to 20 hours a week not studying, not dreaming, not playing, but collecting fuel wood. They have to travel through forests and rough terrain with heavy bundles on their heads, missing school, 1 to 3 hours of school daily. They have chronic lateness, no time for after-school activities or homework. And when resources are scarce in the community, whose education gets prioritized? The boys. This isn't just about cooking. This is about systematically denying half our population the chance to rise. Let's talk about economic violence, because that's what this is. Women spend 4 to 6 hours daily collecting fuel wood and cooking. That's a full workday lost. They cannot engage in income-generating activities, cannot go to markets, cannot sell goods, cannot trade, cannot escape. Melinda Gates says it best. Unless things change, girls today will spend hundreds of thousands more hours than boys doing unpaid work, simply because society assumes it's their responsibility. Fuel collection consumes hours of women's days. Slow, smoky cooking requires constant tending, fanning flames, keeping toddlers away from them, stirring the flames. And when health problems reduce your capacity, when you're too sick to breathe or too exhausted, you still have to cook. Because if you don't, your family doesn't eat that day. This graph shows us that in order to reach universal access, we must increase global annual funding from $2.5 billion today to $4 billion by 2030. This is a small sum when you consider that it reduces time collecting fuel wood by 75%, prevents 60% of premature deaths, and slashes greenhouse gas emissions by 50%. The cost of inaction is estimated to be $2.4 trillion. Think about that. That's 300 times more for inaction than it would cost to solve the problem. Take a look at this framework. Reach, benefit, empower, transform. We must reach women through trainings and demonstrations. We must ensure they benefit and that their needs are met. We must empower them to go out and make life-changing decisions, and we must transform gender norms at the root. In these last 5 minutes, 70 million women have cooked a meal. 30 women have died from cooking pollution, and 300 million girls were out collecting fuel wood. Just 5 minutes. Think about the next 5 minutes, and the 5 after that, and tomorrow, and next year. The cycle will continue unless we act. I'm asking you to join me. Help raise awareness. Challenge the silence around this topic. Support organizations that are giving clean cook stoves. Because every woman deserves the chance to breathe normally while she cooks. Every girl deserves to be in school instead of out collecting fuel wood. Every child deserves to grow up with healthy lungs. I'm asking you to join me to change the next 5 minutes and every 5 minutes after that. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, that's our program. Thank you so much. It was truly incredible, and I am just so proud and humbled, and I don't even know what to say. Thank you so much, everybody.